showing up, being here, bringing all your questions. Awesome. So there's been a lot of learning at this end of the building, well, every end of the building, but at this end of the building, with all the shifts and changes, and with the IDOE and the State Board of Education over the last year. And as we finally started to put it in some kind of cohesive, would you say cohesive? Semi-cohesive?
It's cohesive.
Okay.
I mean,
Process over the last 6 weeks.
such tape
We wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed. So Danielle's going to click for us, and I'll give you a little bit of history for those of you. This was our very first kind of teens program. This was up at Highlander Point. So the early days of the teens program, very personalized. We did a lot of goal sheets, very few seminars, very few lessons. 2008, we moved into phase 2, named for teens program with teen focus. This was a very big picture focus, and that's another whole story, but very much trying to think about it as how do we support individuals in personalized learning. In 2012-ish, it became a bit more structured when we had 160 of these 14 to 18-year-olds. And some of that I think was positive, some of it felt like it was being done to us, and so we kind of fought and worked with that. 2018, Indiana becomes more aligned with community Montessori, and so we're going to talk more about that, so that's exciting. You're like, yeah, that's
sorry,
right.
no, we're talking.
So to go backwards a little bit, 2011-ish accountability became the focus, as I think everybody knows, throughout the nation and the state. So we had this graduation qualifying exam, which my oldest was in that very first picture, who now has twins, by the way, so we've gone full circle. She was able to be in that one of those first groups to have that GQE, which is what that was called then, graduation qualifying exam. And anyone that didn't pass it from that point to last year took it twice a year. If I could quote, your name is Casey today, that demoralizing process that was happening with teens. And some of you know that from your own teens. The pass rate for I-STEP math, for example, last year, 2016-17, was about 30% across the state. And so you can imagine our percentage was a little bit lower than that, but those kids were taking it twice a year and doing interventions, and it felt like that's all they were doing. So teens felt the same way. So we can keep going. I kind of went into the next slide a little bit. So that's that, that conversation about practicing for and retaking I-STEP 10 twice a year. So now we can either continue to retake and the process to get a possible waiver, which is what happens. So if a young person practices and retook it every time it was offered, then they were eligible for a waiver. And so we had a very common voice with other schools in the state that thought, this is not helpful, right? And so finally in 2018, it was really kind of led by the State Board of Education. They said, okay, let's make a new plan. And so they've been working on this since about 2016. And so finally in 2017, they started to put it together. In 2018, it became kind of, you can do it now. So there was that very process of how do we do that part better and different. So we're going to talk some today about what those other graduation pathways are besides passing the two I-STEP 10 math, I-STEP 10 language. And right now, teens can opt in to doing the graduation pathways. For the year 2023, teens will have to opt out. We'll all be in. There's no opt out, so everyone will be doing a graduation pathway. So there'll be no more of the retaking process. So we wanted to jump on it and start doing it right away. We met with all the Woods teens last week. I don't know. There was just a sigh of relief, I think, all the staff felt from the room. Like,
it was visible.
You mean this
They're
thing
all like this.
that some of us, which is 30%, and in most cases when they don't pass it the first time they take it, they don't pass it, and it's more of a psychological thing a lot of times than it is even an ability kind of thing. But does anyone know who Todd Rose is? So some of you might have been here for the State of the School. I think it was 2 years ago when I showed a little video called The Myth of Average. Does anyone remember that? You remember a little bit? So I'd encourage you to look it up. It's a powerful video about how pilots, when we first started making planes for pilots, we made them based, the dimensions were based on the average pilot. And so they created the average pilot, they created the average cockpit, and and they realized that none of the pilots were average, and so they were all struggling with handling the plane in something that was built for the average. And so that's when they started having movable seats and movable gears and things that people could really utilize the plane. And so he has a new book out right now, which I'm about halfway through, that's called The End of Average. And it's a fascinating book, and if you're interested, I'd highly recommend it. But the first third of the book speaks to the fact that there was this averagarian process that happened in the United States in the 1850s. And so there was a lot of different people involved with that. You know, I'm an education professional. I've gone to master's school. I didn't hear any of these things. We heard about Dewey, so it's really interesting to understand why schools were created the way they are. And so his argument is we have to end average because average is not real. And many of you, as your kiddos are in this end of the building, are thinking about ACT, SAT, all of those things. And are they norm? Are they doing better than everybody else? Will they get into college? Ball State announced just a week and a half ago that you can opt out of putting your SAT and ACT scores for admittance. And so now there's, I think, almost 1,000 colleges and universities in the United States now that you can opt out of that because they recognize that the ACT and SAT scores do not correlate directly to success in college. And so what does? And so let's keep talking about that. So if you go ahead. Mm-hmm. So what are the graduation pathways? So I'm going to hand you something. Let's start with this. Actually, let's start with this. I know there's more here than there are people, but get around a little faster, you can just print them out. So this is a little flow chart that says some of your kiddos, how many are 10th level in here right now? Your kiddos 11th level? 12th level? 9th level? Okay. So, you know, the ISTEP 10 happens in 10th level year, and so it will happen this spring of their 10th level year. So this first paper is just kind of a flow chart that shows how that happens, and if they chose to do the graduation pathway, and if they choose to keep taking the test. So, you know, in this fall, we'll be coming back to if your teen is a 12th level this year that has not passed the ISTEP 10, if we don't have a plan for their pathway, they will need to retake the test. So that's why this communication part's really important. And so this kind of tells you that. We're going to get into what a pathway is in just a minute, but it just kind of shows you how that works as far as if it's passed or not, which direction to go to. Any questions about that? Okay. That's just a visual to help you do that. Know that. So all of these different ways are ways to get the pathways, and here it kind of breaks it down. They first need a high school diploma. It could be a general diploma, it could be a technical diploma, honors diploma, Core 40 diploma, but they need to have a diploma. The second is they need to learn and demonstrate employability skills. So there's more ways that I'm putting on here. These are the ways that we're focusing on right now. Each school, district, school, corporation for us will create what that looks like at our school. So I'm going to pass out a paper in a minute. It's going to have more things on here than this, but you need to pay attention to this because we're not ready to do all of those things, and some of it we won't do at all. Learn and demonstrate employability skills. So I have to tell you, last year, a member of the State Board of Education came to our school, and ironically, as we talked about our portfolio projects, the wording in this document is almost exactly like our portfolio projects. I don't know. I'm just saying I think it's really, really interesting. I think it's really, really cool. And so we've been doing these portfolio projects, philanthropy, entrepreneurship, internships, governmental exploration, wellness, capstones, 8 years or so. What year is this? So at least
10.
Yeah. So our first graduating class in 2011. So ever since that first graduating class. And so now we can utilize those things we already have in place as the second criteria. And this is why a lot of schools won't put this in place right away because they don't have all this developed yet. We already have it developed. And these three things, either they're philanthropy, entrepreneurship, or capstone project, those are the three things that can work right now. If you don't know what those are, there's your work at home for this weekend with your team. Because I will tell you what's going to mess this whole process up for some teens is if they show up in their senior year with 4 portfolio projects to do. And they want to do them tomorrow and they don't work that way. These are impact projects. and they have, there's a process for them and an oversight and so forth. But that's the second part. That's what helps to demonstrate this employability skills, is them doing one of these three things. The third part is post-secondary ready competencies. So in that book, End of Average, that's one of the solutions part, is to focus on competencies instead of averages, and to stop grading and focus on what we know. And so that's what these things do. These are saying the State Board of Education, and now the Department of Education, has said there's more than one way to show that you're competent to leave high school and get a diploma. So, honors diploma. We have about 30 to 35% of our teens that graduate with an honors diploma every year. That can either be the academic honors diploma or the technical honors diploma. If they have that, that checks off that graduation pathway. So parents are like, oh great, finished. My teen's gonna do the honors diploma, I can check it off. What if they don't meet all the criteria for the honors diploma? Which could happen, and has happened. In the spring of their senior year, they're taking a dual credit course, which they have to get a B.
They have to get a C.
Is it a C? I thought it was a B for the honors diploma. Anyway.
They have to get a C or above in each individual course, and overall be average.
For the honors diploma. So then they don't get that average, and therefore they lose the honors diploma. And if they haven't retaken the ISTEP 10 each year and done the practice, they're not eligible for the waiver. Do you get where I'm going? They have to re-enroll. They're not eligible to graduate with a diploma. So that's the trick with all this, and that's what makes it super important that we're all partnering really well. And when you come to these PPCs, that you're as knowledgeable as your team. Try to make it come from the team, right? But you have that same information so that we don't just go, okay, they're doing honors diploma, they're finished. They have to do all the pieces of the honors diploma. And if they do that 35% or so, we have teams that are honors diploma track that haven't passed a portion of the ISTEP 10. We have teams that have done really well in ACT or SAT that haven't passed the ISTEP 10. So none of those things correlate. The end of average. Anyway, ACT, SAT benchmarks, so those are the industry benchmarks. They're pretty high, but that's also another area for those teens that many of them still do take ACT or SAT. They'll choose one of those and take it usually first their junior year and then take a retake for the spring of their junior year and then maybe again in the fall of their senior year. And so if they hit those benchmarks, which are on a piece of paper I'm going to pass out to you in a minute, then that's their check off. So if they do that one, it's done. Right? So it's a little bit less risky than getting your honors diploma. Does that make sense? Oh, you're going to leave all the hard questions for later, aren't you? I could just tell them. So then a state or industry certification. We are still learning what all that means. I will tell you this has been a project for 2.5 years that I've been working on with other coworkers about, is there a list? If there's a list, how do they get them? Where do they go? And so it's not an easy process, and we do not have all the partnerships yet in place. But for one that I could give you right now today is that someone could go, for example, to Ivy Tech and go through the coursework in health services to become a certified nurse assistant, CNA. It's a process. It takes a couple of years to go through that program. Or they could go to Sellersburg. There's a program in Sellersburg that you go 6 Saturdays over a course of a period of time and complete your certification for your CNA. We've had teams that have done that at our school. And so if you do that process and complete that certification and get the certification from that program, then that could be one of the check-off points. Questions about that? Okay. So the next one is a career technical education concentrator. You're going to hear me say that word, 92 times in the next 20 minutes or so that we're together. And so if you would go online at the DOE, you're going to see lots of words. Pathways, clusters, concentrators. We've just tried to simplify this. We're calling it the graduation pathways, which is this. Concentrators are a part of this, and we'll just leave it at that for now, okay? So that means something somebody's interested in. Education, for instance. So there's an education concentrator. And there's also where you can get work on your associate's degree, a 2-year program at Ivy Tech, and be able to transfer to IUS for a 4-year degree. So kids can go as far as they want with that process. So if someone's working on the concentrator, Most of the concentrators have 3 courses that are components of that concentrator. And so one of them is called Adult Roles and Responsibilities, Preparing for College Careers, and Interpersonal Relationships. And so those 3 courses are courses that we've put in to kind of a freshman experience and sophomore experience at CM. So all of the teens that are currently in 9th level will go through all of that coursework. That doesn't mean that they'll pass it or whatever, but they'll all go through that coursework, and if they complete it, then they'll have 4 credits towards their concentrator, okay? So in order for the concentrator to count, they need to at least to have 2 more credits that would go towards their concentrator. So if someone's going for the educational professionals, there's 2 courses that are part of that concentrator, Education Professionals 1 and Education Professionals 2. They can take both of them on campus with our CETE support person, which is Hannigan. And so it's a directed studies course, so they could go and take those 2 courses here through directed studies, and they will be integrated with an internship here or elsewhere as part of that program. Or they could go on campus at Ivy Tech. I'm mentioning Ivy Tech a lot just because that's who we've partnered with. They're the closest and the most affordable, and they make plans with high school programs. So that may change in a few years. As of right now, our goal is to create the best experience for the least amount of additional funding for people. That does not mean that you have to go to Ivy Tech. That means like my daughter, youngest, who graduated from here in 2014, had 23 college credits from U of L, IUS, and Ivy Tech. And we did that on purpose because we wanted her to have lots of experiences before she went to Bloomington. So those are all things you can still do, but we're creating a partnership so that we can have a lower tuition with Ivy Tech, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But they could do either one of those. And so that's, again, where you and your teen and your teen's advisor have to have those conversations, What do you want to do? What has been happening in the future, not that it was necessarily a bad thing, because I love that we had kids that had 92 electives when they graduated because they experienced so many different things. But sometimes that would lead to to more confusion for some because they didn't really know what they wanted to do next. And so the way we're structuring that 9th and 10th level this year and forward is to have a little less choice in electives, get more of those core credits completed, and then their 11th and 12th year, they have more flexibility. So all of that's kind of part of that process. So if they complete that 1 or 2 extra courses for their concentrator, then that checks that off the list. Questions?
3 credits is also not question.
Does that make sense? Does that seem really confusing? You gotta give me something.
It seems
dying
like
up here.
We'll figure it out. And each one of those things is a prerequisite. One of those will get a diploma.
So you have to have 1 in each of these categories.
1 in each of those.
That's right. So 1 in this 2 and in this one. And so the last one we haven't talked about here is dual credit. Yeah.
On the third, basically, if they take the ACT or the SAT, that is.
So they have to meet the benchmark. The benchmark's high.
And the benchmark is separate for every single section
Gotcha.
of the ACT.
I'm going to pass out a paper that gives you more details on that. The last criteria that we're supporting here are 3 different dual credits that they have to have a C or above. So a teen, we're anticipating in the next 2 years that all of our 9th and 10th levels will have a concentrator plan that we'll partner with you and them and the advisor. We'll all have kind of a plan for where they're going to concentrate. Health, education, science, technology, programming, whatever, right? So they kind of have a thought base. It doesn't mean they have to stay there forever, but our goal is to help them to kind of know how would that look? What's that process look like? For other teens, we still offer 2 courses on campus in a partnership with Ivy Tech where we bring their professors in and we utilize those courses for dual credit. So this year it's English 111 and what is that? Speech. What's it called? What is it?
It's public speaking.
Public speaking, yeah. That's another name. But anyway, so we do those 2 courses on campus, and those are still there. So teens that want to take more, instead of taking courses specific towards their concentrator because they're like, I don't know what I want to concentrate in, can still do that process. They can still take credits on their own. And so they might take the things, so on this other paper I'm going to give you in a minute, it's called the Core Transfer Library Anyone know what that is? Just curious. A few of you do. And so this is, I think it's 88 courses right now throughout the state that are in this core transfer library. So that means if I take this course at Ivy Tech and it's on the transfer library, IU has to take the same course. Purdue has to take the same, they can't say, no, we won't take it because you got it from that university. They have to take it from these. And so those two, English 111 and public speaking, are both on that core transfer list. And then oftentimes kids go on campus for at least another one. So if they take 3 and get a C average or higher, then that counts as their graduation pathway. So they need to have one of these things down here to pass in that part. Yeah.
So the technical education would that most likely be a partner with Ivy Tech?
Give more information. You mean like a concentrator in technology? So some of the things they could start with here, and then like we've been doing that for years. We've had kids that have graduated with technical honors diploma, and so they'll take their courses that we can support here, and then they'll go on campus for their A++.
It could be.
Is that the right
A++,
number? Okay.
programming,
Yeah, so they could go for that or whichever direction they're going to go for. Yeah.
Those concentrators can be either all high school courses or have dual credits integrated into them. So there's a lot of options that can happen as we kind of start going in that direction.
So there are clusters, and pathways, and concentrators. We're not getting into all that, but almost anything your team can dream up, we can find a concentrator that fits in it. And so that's kind of how we're going about it with them right now, is we're just saying, if you want to dream it, we can help you do it. So, what's a concentrator? Series of coursework toward a career or college objective. It doesn't have to be that kiddo who wants to go on to college for a specific thing. It could just be something they're interested in as far as a career. We have some teens that are taking HVAC courses on Ivy Tech campus this coming year. And it's because they want to see if that might be something they want to get into. Electrician, we have one going to Scottsburg for welding. So it doesn't have to be the traditional courses for a 4-year college degree. Up to 4 credits, so I talked about those whole foundations, and 4 credits could be up to that if you just do the courses that we have here. So you need 6, so you could add those other 2 for that. Depending on the concentrator, you could take all the coursework here through the directed studies or otherwise, or take college courses. You know, what role is important for you is to make sure that you're both on the same page. If your team signs up here, makes all their plans for welding, and they're not talking to you, and you get a bill from Fax that's for $500 for their welding course, you're going to be like, what? Right? And so it's really important that those things kind of all work together and you're having those conversations. The actual dual credit class is only $210 because you get a discount. We'll talk about that. But the supply fee for welding is $300. The supply fee for photography is $25. Many don't have supply fees, but you kind of have to know that part if that's something you want to do. They could get on as an internship, you know, at our welding friends at the industrial park and potentially get licensed through welding through that internship. So there's other ways, just like I told you with the CNA. We don't have all of that knowledge, but we just encourage you to have those conversations so it's not a surprise for you. So at your PPCs this week, if you have teens that are planning, I think there's 20 that are planning to go on campus through our partnership plan that get 50% off tuition. You're going to be given that information from the advisor, and once you sign it, then we will send you the bill for here. So all the money comes through here right now. Well, I didn't mention that, but remind me about technology fee when we get to it.
Okay.
Yeah. Concentrators support college acceptance as well. I mean, one of the real beliefs is if you've completed the educational professionals concentrator or even the pathway, and I don't want that to get confusing right now, and you apply to Ball State University, the belief is, I mean, this hasn't really been tested yet, that they'll look at your admission based on that, right? They see, wow, you've already taken the pathway for education, you want to come in for education? The belief is that's really going to help that process. So I think it's just something to be aware of. So off-campus learning for graduation pathways, so college courses taken off campus or online. There are other things to do besides Ivy Tech, but I want to tell you about that partnership that we have. So we've had teens take online courses from Trine University. Does anyone know what Trine University is? So your teens right now can take a class through Trine for $50. It is a college course. It's an 8-week course, so it's fast. But the word is, Ivy Tech's moving to 8 weeks courses maybe next year. So there's a lot of schools that are moving to that kind of cluster. They have fewer things at a time. Nobody knows that that's for sure going to happen, but that's the word on the street. Just feel like you to be the first to know this gossip. Really. But anyway, so there's lots of ways to do that. So we've got teams that have done the trying thing, and so if they don't have a lot on their plate, I mean, it's a fast-paced kind of thing, you know, but it could be an option for some teams. So, you know, IUS, some teams have gone to IUS. IUS at this point does not have a special price for high school kids. You pay the same as what you do there. Some have families that work at U of L and they take a, you know, discounted courses at U of L or not, or even Bellarmine, Sullivan. You know, there's online courses at Ivy Tech. Those things don't work as a part of our partnership, but there's still those options as well. So let's talk some more about Ivy Tech. I'm going to pass this around. Don't get lost in it. This is just all the googly goop of what I just told you. I also have copies of all of this presentation today for you to take with the facts about it, but I just felt like you needed to see something a little bit more than what we talked about. So, thank you. So some of you have known that have taken Professor on Loans, we call those POL courses here, or you've gone on off-campus instruction. Most of the time, if you go off-campus, you set that up with your family, you let your advisor know, the advisor has to approve it, we tell the curb desk there's an off-campus plan, everyone goes on happily. All those things can still happen. But when we met with Ivy Tech last year to see if there's any way we could strengthen our partnership, we learned that we could help our teams get 50% off tuition. Now I will tell you, things change a lot at Ivy Tech, and things are changed a lot. I don't know if this will be in place a year from now. My first question is, so we have to create what's called an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. My first question is, I want to create a 5-year MOU so that we have this locked in for all of our family. They looked at me and said, are you kidding me? I don't even have a 5-year contract to work here. Like, I can't do that. And I'm like, ah. So anyway, you know me, I'm not going to stop at that. But anyway, the chancellor, I know some of you might know Travis Harrod just became the chancellor at Ivy Tech. We'll be visiting here this fall, so that'll be cool. So we can continue those conversations as well. So this, I'm going to go over it in more detail, but I'll go ahead and hand it out so you can see it. So this is it talks more specifically about this partnership with Ivy Tech, and this is what we're going to spend kind of the bulk of our time on right now. Thanks, Kyle. So I'm just going to reiterate again, you don't have to have your kids go to Ivy Tech, but it's an option. And we've worked out a plan so it's 50% off of what the standard tuition is. So that means for a 3-credit hour course, at the most, it will, well, unless there's additional material supply fees, it'll be about $210. Yeah. So the technology fee that Ivy Tech has assessed for students has changed over the years. This year, it's $75 a semester. And I went, gulp. I said, can you remove that fee for our students as a part of this partnership? And they are removing it this year for our teams. I hope it will continue further, but for now, that $75 fee for the semester, so you can take 1 course or 5, will be removed from that. So I've removed it from this conversation. That may come back a year from now. So basically, you know, the first part of this just says, you know, please partner, please communicate, please be in the know. So reading emails, sign up for PPCs, looking at your team's advisory notes. Soon you'll be able to look at their transcripts. We started this whole process this year called Life Folders. So we wrote this terrific grant for the Lilly Endowment that we didn't get this year, darn it. But we decided to do all those things, or at least part of them. Anyway, imagine that. So anyway, that's what we're doing. And so this Life Folder plan is to really help us to better help the team better inform their decisions. And so starting even at the 7th and 8th level in a year or two, they'll start informing those things through inventories and conversations and observations and shadowing. So when they get up to be 10th, 11th level, the advisor and the team and you can look at this Life Folder and say, wow, why are you looking at a vet for an internship when everything you've put in your life folder has to do with being a teacher? They're like, oh, I forgot I wanted to do that. Yeah. So anyway, we just want to have a place where we store all that information so we can really look at and make the best informed decisions with that team that we can. So that process is all kind of happened in the background. So we're in our pilot year of that. And so, we're just starting to create the template and craft that information. So, and then it just goes on to talk about, the core transfer library. So you're going to get this in an email tomorrow. And all of these things that are shaded are hyperlinked so you can look specifically at the core transfer library. Yes, I did this at 3 in the morning. So there should be some 3 potential options for dual enrollment. So you'll hear the words dual credit, dual enrollment. We say them differently for different purposes. Dual enrollment could be, I might take an HVAC class, but I've already used up all my electives, and I really can't use it as a credit on my transcript. As far as like for graduation, it can still show up on there, but it can't be an elective because I've already used those. So that's more of a dual enrollment thing than it is a dual credit. Does that make sense? So you're not counting them for both your high school graduation and for college. Okay. So we talked a lot about the Concentrator, so I'll let you read that. I won't go into that again. So there's 3 ways. So some teams will take those traditional courses, which we talked about, like English 111. Some will, focus on their Concentrator, their area of interest, like Human Services 101, for example. We have a couple of teams taking that this year and have in the past. So if they're interested in being a social worker or in counseling, that could be a course they can take. For some teams, they start with English 111 and then they decide they don't want to go to college. For other teams, they start with English 111, they're like, I want to go to college. So it's really trying to know that team, and for them, what makes them tick. So it might make sense for a team to take something like Human Services 101 because they're really passionate about that, versus taking some of the standard traditional courses for college. Make sense? So that's what we encourage you to have those conversations too with your team so you can have better inform them. And so others may take courses or complete industry certifications for potential career options, like the HVAC 101 example I gave. If they take a series of courses toward a pathway, they would complete a pathway or even receive an associate's degree. That can happen. We have teams that show up into the woods from the islands already with 6 or more credits. So that's possible for them to do that. It's not something, just like we're not trying to make everyone go to college, we're not trying to make everyone do any of those things, but it's an option. And for some teams that sounds exciting because if they don't qualify for any financial aid, they can get a whole associate's degree potentially for half the price. So that's what we kind of like about that. So if you turn over on the back, so there's CM campuses, CM campus dual credits, and ITCC. What does ITCC stand for? Yeah, so I just shortened that, right? So the CM campuses, we talked that first bullet point about what we're currently offering. There are requirements for these courses. So they either have to, many are eligible through the PSAT, so all the 10th levels, unless we've decided differently, take the PSAT. Sometimes the 11th levels also take the PSAT, or they've taken ACT or SAT. And those scores could qualify them to take most of these dual credit kind of courses like we're going to offer here. They'll get a 6th semester GPA, so at the end of their 6th semester, the end of their junior year, that GPA could qualify them to be eligible to take dual credit. Also the Accuplacer. So the Accuplacer is the assessment that Ivy Tech uses, so we give it here. And so for teens that haven't qualified in another way, they take the Accuplacer, and so they're able to take it 2 or 3 times a year. I think it's 3 times a year. To see if they,
year.
What's that again?
3 times a calendar year.
3 times a calendar year to be able to see if they've got that course, that benchmark for that process. So it just reminds us these courses are college courses and our college level that are taught here. They have a little bit of transition. You've heard us talk about a teen transition team. Does anyone know the 3 staff members that are part of the teen transition team? Ooh, you can't answer, Shannon. We're going to let them answer. Who's one? Hannigan. Who's the second one? Valerie. Third one's Danielle. So they're your teen transition team. They're not your first stop. But if you have a question for something like Accuplacer, Valerie's the right person to ask. You know, Zach might know some about Accuplacer, but he's not going to know all the details about what number you have to get for which courses, right? So she can help with that. Most of the time, you're going to go to your advisor. Your advisor's going to, move you to somebody else if there's a need for that. They'll receive a grade for that. Only an assessment of C or above will work for their concentrator. So we talked about the fees. On-campus fee of $175 per course, plus any textbook or other fees from ITCC. If the family qualifies for free reduced lunch, some of you, please don't say who you are, got a phone call from Prana this week, because as we were going through the process, we don't share that information with anyone. The only person that knows it is Valerie and Prana. That's it. And so Valerie needs to know it, because if your teen qualifies for free lunch, then they will only pay $25 for the course at Ivy Tech. The school's going to cover the rest of that. If your child qualifies for reduced lunch, they'll pay $75. That's the tuition part. So some of the families, when we went through and audited those, qualified last year. It didn't turn in a form this year. And so we called and said, here's a courtesy call. If you can do this by Monday or Tuesday, we can make that work for this year. We won't be able to do that every year, but we wanted to try to get that working. So when you do those enrollments and you're like, oh, I just filled out all that information for enrollment, fill out the free reduced lunch if you think it might help, because it will really save you some money. And the school's just paying for that. And this will all be billed through fax. And so, you'll either get billed, like if you're taking English 111, you'll get billed the on-campus fee of $175 per course. So if you go down, so we'll talk about the courses for here. Any textbook fees or materials are separate. Sometimes the teens share a textbook. Those are things you work out with your team. We encourage you to let the team be the one making the decisions. You have to go through you to verify it, right? So when my children took college courses, they looked up the prices. They came to me with the Cliff Notes. I said, well, I agree with your decision, moved on. I don't go in and find their stuff for them. We want them to do that part. So then there's the ITCC courses on ITCC campus. So each semester we'll share the dual enrollment options from ITCC with the teen advisors. Other courses are available too. We kind of come up with a list that we think are usually the ones that most teens will go to, and share those with the advisors, or else the advisors would never understand all the different, it's too much information. Was that so many courses? But we come up with what we think, mostly one-on-one. If we gave the whole booklet to the teens, and it's already happened, teens are like, oh, I want to do this 303 course. It's a 300 level course. It's not probably the right fit for you for your first class on campus. So most of them are 100 level courses. And so we've created this kind of shortened list. But if a teen says, what I'm really interested in, then the TTT, the Teen Transition Team, will work together with the advisor to help to make a plan and see if it's possible. Course fees for the ITCC campus courses are 50% off tuition, so that's where that is right now. It would be $210 and some change for a course. There's also a $75 technology fee waived for this year, which is exciting. These will be billed through fax. There may be additional material supply fees for certain courses. Like, I know there's a couple of people that want to take photography. I know that's a $25 fee. We don't have all those memorized. Once we come up with who wants to prepare for what, they can go online and look at that. But we just do that once we do the billing. Currently, ITCC, Ivy Tech also has a Take a Course on Us program where teens can take a course up to 3 credits for $50 a semester. They're limited. They're usually used for summer courses. Are you guys, okay, yeah, just come on in and have a seat. So if your teen's gonna take a class in the summer, or they missed doing this process with us at the beginning of the year, they might want to go on campus and see if they can take a course on us. It's a $50 fee for the course. If the family qualifies for free reduced lunch, they will be billed $25 if they qualify for free, $75 if they qualify for reduced, and all of these will be billed through fax. If the teen drops a course, they'll only get the refund if they drop it by August 31st. On either course, on campus or there. That's what the Ivy Tech process is for that. Woo! Your head swimming? Mm-hmm. Any questions at this point? have enough of these for everyone because you really don't need them, but I'm just going to pass them around. You can look at them. So this is what this will look like that you're getting at your PPC, which is just the dual enrollment. So Valerie has gone through and filled out all of them for the 60 or so kids that are taking dual credits this semester, and given them to the advisors. The advisors will go over them with you tomorrow, Thursday or Friday. And so you can just kind of see what that part looks like. It doesn't have the fees on there. You'll have to look up the fees if you need to know that. You can ask Valerie. She can also help you with that if you need to know before we send the bill. All right, ready for your tough questions.
I have a question that's not tough, but I'm just curious.
Oh, man.
Why are internships not part of the have to demonstrate work readiness? Seems like internships would be the obvious.
So internships are actually one of the items on here that we're not doing yet because they've added other criteria to it that we don't have in place. Like they have to have a course that goes with their internship. I don't know if you remember us talking about that as a staff. And right now, that's just something that we have to add to that's too much for us to do. So if they do an internship, they have to have a companion course that goes with that internship. So for right now, we're not making that one of the number 2 priorities.
Could that be done through a directed study though?
Say it again.
Could that be done through a directed study though?
Well, so what he's talking about is that second part. If you want to go back to that slide a minute, Danielle. Down one, sorry.
Oh my gosh, it's terrible.
So he's talking about this part, learn and demonstrate employability. So on number 2, internships is one of those options on that piece of paper that you have. I haven't listed it here because of the requirements that the state has for internships that aren't what we're doing right now. So these are the 3 things that we're doing. So they would either use philanthropy, entrepreneurship, or capstone.
Now what I'm saying is that if they did want to do that, could you create a companion course with a directed study?
We could, we're just not encouraging them to do that right now because it's really complicated. It takes a lot more energy and work for the advisor to do on a one-to-one basis, and they're already doing these 3 things. They have to do one of those 3 things anyway. So you might as well do one of the ones they already have a plan for than for us to try to create something new.
I will say a lot of times it works out, and I don't know if it works for that. Like for instance, I have someone this year who's doing an electrical internship over the summer, and so he's learning the trade of an electrician. And so he's also doing an intro to electrical engineering course through direct study. I don't know if it meets all the parameters. of that
Yeah,
second
it's just
component,
not something, it's a
but-
little bit more complicated than that, yeah. So,
But I'm just saying, independent of whether or not it satisfies that, it makes sense to.
yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's what counts, right?
Yeah, so we haven't really, I didn't put that on there, darn it.
If you pass the ISEP, it does count.
So, who knows what the ASVAB is? Okay, so it is something that we're looking at doing this year. Forgot to put that on the spreadsheet. Thank you, appreciate it. So right now we have a couple of dozen teens that haven't passed one course of the ISTEP that are in 12th level. And so they're putting together plans with their advisors for one of those pathways. But we're also going to have them take the ASVAB. So the ASVAB is an inventory, an interest inventory that is used for high schools. It also has what's called an AFQT, TQ. Anyway, it's one of those 2 acronyms. I think it's AFQT score that people can use also to go to the military. Now, there's ways for us to take the ASVAB where everyone gets a recruiter that calls them after they take this test, and there's ways that they don't. We're choosing the way that it doesn't. Doesn't mean that a teen couldn't take that ASVAB to a recruiter after they take it if that's their choice, but we'll just be using it for the interest inventory part, and if they get the minimum score in order to count it for a pathway is 31. That's not our goal, is to use that for that. It's just a way that could be kind of a safety net for some teens, especially in these first couple of years. We'll pilot it with some of our 11th and 12th levels this year, and then we'll decide from there if we'll continue to use that as kind of a catch-all or not. So they actually, it's a civilian organization. They bring the test to us with proctors. So we're hoping that can happen on the same day as PSAT. We're still finalizing all that. Thank you. So here's some things that teens can do. Discover, reflect, take risks, think out of the box, be open to challenge. Meet expectations or more on all courses without retakes. So that's where the trick is right now. So some 12th levels could be off campus this year, but they're retaking their humanities, a biology, and then they're kind of stuck. So that's the part where if you're going on every week or two with your team to look at their advisory notes to see where they are, you'll be able to see, wait a minute, I thought you said you were up to date. It shows you have 5 chapters still to do in Algebra 2. And they're like, oh, I finished those yesterday. Okay, email your advisor, copy me, and let's just make sure together, And so when we say that consistently and matter of fact, not naggy, but matter of fact, then it makes sure that we're all on the same page. And then you don't get surprised with their 11th or 12th year when they're retaking something, or their transcript that you get at the end of the year. Choose courses of study that are interesting, or find ways to create interest in the courses you're studying. Those are things that we do, but we won't know unless they tell us, And so they might tell you, oh my gosh, this biology is driving me crazy, the way we have to do this presentation, and your goal would be, how can we do it in a way that's interesting to you? Well, I can't do that, this is the assignment, did you ask? Most of the time when teens ask, advisors are really creative, amazing individuals, and they can help to craft that. They can't do it all the time and every time, but they can do it sometimes and to really help to incorporate those interests. Complete dynamic plan portfolio projects each of the 4 years. If you don't know what those are, I'm going to test you in just a minute. It's something to get familiar with. Some families are 100% in, and those teens, when they get to their senior year, only have capstone left. And some have 3 or 4. And they're like, well, can't they just do that this weekend? No. It's an impact project. It really should take several months if we do it well. And one of the TTT, transition teams roles, is to make sure that we do that well together. And so they support the advisors with those projects as well. Be authentic and forthcoming and ask for support whenever needed. Show and do best work consistently. Not always, consistently. All right, what are the portfolio projects? Name them. Philanthropy, entrepreneurship, capstone, wellness, government exploration.
There's one that goes with wellness. It's an or.
So either or, second language inclusive, for wellness, do we get them all? And then internships. They have to have 4. They have to have 4 that they've met expectations on.
4 internships.
That they've met expectations on. Some have had 7 because they didn't meet the expectations on a couple of them and they had to redo it again. So it's important. Okay, what can you do? Families, provide the rainbow. This one over at school, I don't know if you knew about this. We sent it out an email a few years ago. I just think it's beautiful. But really, love and show respect for your teens. That's important. Show the rainbow. Learn what they are studying, learning by reviewing advisory notes and attending each PPC and meeting with the teen transition team. So Valerie meets with teens. The teen transition team has different events and things. You've heard of that. Know what's happening. Talk and listen to their ideas, goals, interests, so coursework, portfolios, and plans are congruent. Like if you do that and we're doing that, wow, we could really build a great bridge for those teens. They need you to champion, not nag. Find the balance with your team. Help them to budget off-campus experiences. That's a great thing. One of the kiddos has taken off-campus class this fall. Is using money that they made over the summer. So it's a great idea to have them start thinking about that. Pay your fax bill. We don't want to put Prina have more gray hairs show up in her hair. It's not fair. And what happens is if you don't pay it, it goes back to the advisors, and then they have to spend more time to contact you. If you need a payment plan, we will work with you, but you need to communicate that to Prina and she can adjust it. What's next? So there's more options for dual credit experiences. Who's heard of ICAP? It's hyperlinked on that paper that I'll email out to you, but it's just so the Department of Ed has kind of created this resource. Itcc Courses are on there as well for families to go in and kind of find. It's a tricky thing, and we're all not, every school in the state right now is like going, what do we do with ICAP? But what we're learning about it is it's going to kind of work like what Itcc is. It's a partnership. So if your team was to take a class from ICAP, it has to go through their advisor, they would bill us, and we bill you through fax. It's a little bit chunky right now, so it's coming next. Fanning the flame of each team is the team effort. That life folder thing that I talked about, that's how we want to do that. It's one of those ways. Expanded community partnerships with industry certifications like welding, CNA, and so forth, and other off-campus experiences. Now you know. You know it all? You got it? Any last questions from anybody? Feel free to stay for the second meeting if you want. You can stay here again. We've been tearing into ourselves for a long time, so I know it's a lot. Was it helpful?